Continuing with Rabbi Steif's holy work, Mitzvos Hashem, the loving commandments from God Almighty on how every human being is meant to live their life in the center lane of the center of God Almighty's blessings and abundance and life and joy and happiness. We're continuing with the laws prohibiting idolatry, and we are going to look here at the concept of an ir nadachas. So we're going to start with the verses because this may not be something that's familiar to many people. Everyone's familiar with the prohibitions in the Torah against idolatry. However, the Torah also has a situation that describes over here in chapter 13 of Deuteronomy. And it says over here, chapter 13, verse 13, Kitishma ba'ach zirecha, arecha asher Hashem Elokecha nisan lecha lasheves sham lemar. You hear in one of your cities, which the Lord your God is giving you to dwell there, and saying, unfaithful men have gone forth from among you and have led the inhabitants of the city astray, saying, let us go and worship other gods which you have not known. Basically, you hear a story, you hear a report that somewhere in the Holy Land, that basically the entire town, entire city has gone astray and started to worship idolatry. And there's a process of an inquiry, investigation, and so forth. And if it's true, we see in verse 16, you shall surely strike down the inhabitants of that city with the edge of the sword, destroy with all that is in it, and its livestock with the edge of the sword. So everything gets destroyed. All the people get executed. The livestock gets executed. Killed. Everything is destroyed. And you should collect all its spoil in the midst of its open square and burn with fire the city and all its spoil completely, for the Lord your God. It shall be a heap of destruction forever, never to be rebuilt. So you're not allowed to take any of the spoils. So normally in war, under certain circumstances, it could be possible to keep the spoils of war. But here, this is a situation where the entire city was involved in this idolatry. So therefore, everything that is in the city has a connection to idolatry, and it's forbidden to benefit from it. It's forbidden to make use of it, and it must be burnt. Everything. And then in verse 18, and nothing that is doomed to be destruction, it says it should be a heap of destruction forever. So it cannot be rebuilt. You see over here the word in the Holy Tongue, tail. If you read about in places in the Middle East and in the Holy Land, you'll see things called tel is this, tel is the first syllable, the first word of a name of a place. Talking about like a mound, and that is like something that is here. It's a Torah word from the Torah. It's an ancient word for referring to a mound. So this becomes like a heap. Everything's piled up, and then it just gets burnt. Loi tibana oid, never to be rebuilt. And then it says in verse 18, nothing that is doomed to destruction shall cling to your hand, so that the Lord may return from his fierce wrath, and grant you compassion, and be compassionate with you, and multiply you as he swore to your forefathers. For you shall hearken to the voice of the Lord your God, to keep all his commandments, which I command you this day, to do that which is proper in the eyes of the Lord your God. So we see over here, this is called a city called ir nadachas. The concept of ir nadachas is a city that is really like pushed away. And there's a lot of different details of this, which cities could qualify, what needs to be, who the people have to be, the number of the people, and so forth. Many details which we're not going to get into now, but the Rabbi Steif addresses this concept in terms of non-Jews and how does this relate to non-Jews. So now if we're going to go inside over here to Rabbi Steif's work, and we go over here to page 347, the bottom. He says there is Siman Chavtes and Lamed. He says it's called it chapter 29 and 30. The mitzvah is Lissoif Ir Nadachas, to burn the city, the Ir Nadachas, this city that's gone into idolatry, God forbid, which corresponds is the Chinuch, the 464th commandment. Like it says, you should burn the city in fire. Burn and fire the city. Deuteronomy 13, verse 17, which we read already. There's another commandment. And this is why he has it as two chapters, 29 and 30, because one chapter is combining two things together over here. One is to burn the city, and one is you should not build it. Chinuch Taf Samahei Vav. Of course, the mitzvah in the Sefer Chinuch is 465 and 66. Shenemar lo tibane oid. It says you should not build it again. Again, referring to chapter 13 and Deuteronomy. Paragraph 1. Aleph. Yesh la'ayin im bnei Noach mitzuim b'zeh kivan shehem mishum l'tet l'devar. We need to look into whether or not Bnei Noach are warned in these commandments, because it is really an extension, it's a part of the general umbrella of Avodah Zarah. That's the end of this chapter. Now let's look over here in the footnote. The editor made the following comment. What is we need to investigate, what is the question for our rabbi, literally, Rabbeinu, our rabbi, meaning the author, Rabbi Steif. What doubt does he have over here that he needs to investigate this any further? If he wants to say that in a city of non-Jews, they should be judged with the judgment of a condemned city, the city that's condemned because it's completely in idolatry, and it should be implemented with all its details as the Torah requires of a city of Jewish people in the Holy Land. And the one thing to clarify over here, maybe I didn't make this clear at the beginning, the Torah is commanding here, the condemned city is talking about a city of Jews, because we already know that the Torah commands the Jewish people to conquer the Holy Land, and the children of Israel have to conquer it, and they're not allowed to leave any person as an idolater. We learned last week they can't even allow an idolater to come in and temporarily into the Holy Land. So the concept of the condemned city is only referring to the Jews, because only the Jews would be in the Holy Land. The children of Israel would be in the Holy Land, possibly going astray over here. Now, actually, an interesting question is what happens if you had a city of Ger Teshav, which are non-Jews who have a residency permit, so to speak, to live in the Holy Land because they have committed not to worship idolatry. They're the only non-Jews allowed to be even temporarily in the Holy Land are non-Jews who are committed not to worshiping idols and to fulfilling the Shabbat Mitzvah B'nai Noach, all the commandments that God Almighty has commanded to all humanity. So while we're working this through, what happens if you have a city in the Holy Land of all Ger Teshav? It's, for whatever reason, let's say it's a city that's traditionally has been non-Jewish, and they all agree and take upon themselves to observe the Shabbat Mitzvah B'nai Noach, and it stays a non-Jewish city, predominantly non-Jewish city. What happens if they turn to idolatry? So let's look here at this comment, and then we could ask these different questions. If Rabbi Steif has a bigger question than what the editor is conceiving over here. So let's see over here. So the editor wants to say that, is Rabbi Steif suggesting the possibility or asking the question that this concept of a condemned city could apply to a city of non-Jews, either in the Holy Land or in the world as a whole? That's impossible to say. It's impossible to say that that's what he's thinking. Because there's numerous details of this concept of Ir Nadachas, of the condemned city, that are only relevant to the children of Israel. Kagain, for example, that the people that are the missionaries to convert this city into the service of idolatry, and the residents of that city, they have to be from the same tribe. They can't be outsiders that are missionaries. It has to be insiders who are missionaries. And also by righteous converts is not relevant. It's not applicable, the concept of a condemned city. Look at the Minchas Chinuch, the Sefer that explains the Sefer of Chinuch. And if to judge the city's residents as individuals, that's obvious, because since they served idolatry, then we know it's a capital punishment for all human beings, including B'nai Noach, including the children of Noach, meaning all human beings. And also the non-Jews have an obligation to set up courts of justice to implement the investigation, the trials, and so forth, and carry out the consequences for people who are involved in idolatry. And it's already explained in this book, holy book that we're learning many times, this concept. And we need to look into this further, to why he's asking this question. Why is Rabbi Steif asking this question? Because if you had a non-Jewish city in, let's say, a particular country, and the residents and the neighbors and the people around them, the entire country as a whole, is responsible for bringing to justice anyone who's involved in idolatry. So what would be the need, so to speak, of this discussion of whether a condemned city applies there? It seems that the condemned city is something that applies only to the children of Israel in the Holy Land, and non-Jews would be judged as individuals. You don't need this special condemned city concept. Maybe what the Rabbi Steif's question is about the commandment, the second of the two commandments he's covering in this chapter, about forbidden to rebuild it, if non-Jews, B'nai Noach, are warned against rebuilding a city, a condemned city. And we need to think about this further. Or investigate this further. So I think that this is raising a lot of interesting questions over here. And the question I raised earlier is addressing an issue that the editor is not really bringing up as a question. But what happens if you have a city of non-Jews that are ger teishav, that they're righteous non-Jews who observe the Shabbat Mitzvah ben Noach, but they did not join the children of Israel? What happens if their city becomes Ir Nidachas, or it all becomes idolatry? So then the editor would say, well, doesn't the qualifications of has to be from the same tribe have to apply? And since the non-Jews are not members of the tribes of the children of Israel, then it wouldn't take effect over here. The concept of condemned city, that's a possibility we have to look into, and I didn't get a chance to really go into this entire discussion in the Gemara and the Talmud about what if there's any possibility that there's could be an application in the Holy Land to the non-Jews. So it's something that requires further thought. And also, if the concept applies as a general concept in a global scale, meaning to say that while it's true that the condemned city has this special status, and the way the Talmud is discussing it is from the context of the children of Israel going astray in that particular city. So therefore, it has to be insiders that cause it to go astray and so forth. So what happens if there's a sort of a different concept, or could we understand a different concept where, let's say, a non-Jewish city, would each individual be individually taken to justice, but then they put everything in a pile in the center of the city and burn it because everyone was involved in idolatry. So that's going to lead to the next question. The next chapter is, well, while we're thinking this through, but we're going to see the question is, well, are non-Jews forbidden to benefit from idolatry, which is something that we've discussed in the past, and we're going to discuss it again now briefly. So therefore, what would be the reason that they would have to burn it if they're not prohibited from benefiting from it? So why would they need to destroy all the livestock and destroy all the possessions, the spoil, the leftovers from the people that live there? So then that would seem to be also not necessary to have the special status of the city because there's nothing prohibited. So that's why the editor comes prohibited from the benefiting from the possessions of the people that were subject to the judgment. So that's why the editor is saying, well, what could this possibly be about? Maybe it's just about a non-Jew comes along, he finds such a city, finds this heap of rubble from the fire, the burning of the condemned city, and he says, hey, here's a great location. I mean, obviously, most cities are built in good locations, right? They're chosen at the outset to be in a good location, and he sees a mound of rubble. He says, let's clear this out, or let's build on top of it, build a new city. And so the editor is saying, maybe that's what Rabbi Steif is referring to. He's not saying they have to burn the city, but they shouldn't. The application to the non-Jews is not to rebuild the condemned city. Okay, so that's just some interesting new territory, which God willing we'll have to investigate further at some point in time. And as we know, learning Torah is an infinite process, and we aim, God willing, to be able to have the merit to come back to the subject and learn it more in depth. Now we'll conclude with chapter 31 on the concept, a further concept of the condemned city. Chapter 31, you should not take any benefit from the condemned city. This corresponds to the chinuch mitzvah, commandment number 467. Aleph shenemar sham. If you see over here, it says, as it says in the Torah verse, sham. It's referring. Sham means there. So that's where was the last place we were quoting from in this book. It is Deuteronomy 13, verse 18. Let's look over here, verse 18. And it should not stick to your hands anything from the spoils. So that which has been burnt. And so clinging to your hands means you should not keep it. You should not take possession of it. You should not hold on to it. So lo yida, right? It says right here, continuing the quote, quoting from that verse. Also in this, we need to investigate whether a non-Jew is permitted to benefit from the condemned city. As I've already written, we need to investigate in general in all matters of idolatry. If ben Noach, child of Noach, meaning every human being, is forbidden to benefit, because we know, first of all, that taking, even for a Jew who is forbidden to benefit from idolatry, but nevertheless is not a capital crime. And so here, the for benefiting, court of law does not execute judgment as a capital crime. We could say, there is to say that Ben Noach is warned. No, it's not a capital crime. He's warned since using idolatrous items that have been used for idolatry in the past, benefit from them, You want to use an idol as a footstool, let's say, or you want to use it to hold down as a paperweight. I mean, that's obviously where we don't want to allow that to happen, because the person's going to put an idol as a paperweight on his desk. He's going to be looking at this idol all day. He's going to start to have a relationship with it. So that's obviously would not be something that we would allow, because you're allowing it to stay in your possession. So the question is, what about other benefit? Let's say that, so we're not going to keep the idol as a paperweight, but what about selling it and turning it into precious metal, let's say, and benefiting from that way? We have to look into what it says. We looked already in this in the Gemara on Pesachim. You can go to previous classes where we discussed the Talmud in the tractate on Pesach, Pesachim, chapter page 73 in the first side. Tikun lahitzim midei erim chai lebnei noyach. Whether it's bringing this idol, this a sacrifice outside the temple mount on Shabbos for idolatry is a for the name of idolatry is going to be a violation of the Shabbos, that for the Jew that's doing it, whether or not he's culpable for violating the Shabbos. And the question over there was, we said that if a person just destroys something but doesn't actually bring about any benefit from the destruction, and that is not going to make him culpable on Shabbos. So if he just goes and kills a chicken, which we don't allow for other reasons, which is forbidden to kill a chicken just for no reason whatsoever. But the question is in addition to the prohibition to kill a chicken just for nothing, would it be a violation of the Shabbos to kill the chicken just for nothing if he did it on Shabbos? And so he's doing it outside the temple, so it doesn't have any benefit there, and it's not going to be usable in the temple service, and he is doing it for idolatry. So it's now it's like just destroying something. So we said that over there, we said that he took, since he slaughtered it, the chicken, or he slaughtered the animal, in the case we're going to say it's a chicken, so he took it out of the category of a limb of a living animal. So he made it something better. He brought it to a better state of being than if he had just, let's say, not killed it. Because now it is edible from the perspective of whether or not it's a limb of a living animal. It's now edible for a non-Jew because it's no longer living, right? There we're talking about the offerings for idolatry. So it seems to be, if we say that by the virtue of the fact that he slaughtered it, even though he slaughtered it for the purposes of idolatry, but it's now, if a non-Jew could eat it without worrying about transgressing on the prohibition of eating a limb of a living animal, it seems that a non-Jew could benefit from an offering of idolatry. And we're not going to push this away. The alkopanim mitaken isur every minachai shehu misses b'neidoch. So it's at least, the very least, he's so to speak fixing this chicken from his mitaken it. He's fixing it so it's no longer covered in the prohibition of eating the limb of a living animal, which is a capital crime for a non-Jew. But this doesn't apply, because here we're talking about a bird, like we say in the Talmud in the 40th page on the second side. So and on a bird, we see that maybe a non-Jew is not actually commanded not to eat the limb of a living bird. The hainu she'eno chayav misaleh. Again, what does it mean he's not warned and not commanded? Meaning to say that it's not a capital crime to eat the limb of a living bird. It's a capital crime to eat the limb of a living animal, but not capital crime to eat the limb of a living bird. Nevertheless, it's still forbidden to hainu aval mikomakom mushar alev. Nevertheless, he's still prohibited to do that. So the question is it's a side question over here, because we see it's not a capital crime to eat from the bird. So is he really a living bird? So is he really fixing anything by slaughtering it that makes it then permissible for the non-Jew, since the non-Jew is not warned not to eat the limb of a living animal? But no, the fact that he's not warned to eat the limb of, he's not warned to eat the limb of a living bird. But that fact that he's not warned to eat the limb of a living bird is only that it's not a capital crime, but he is warned not to do it. It's still prohibited. You can't go and rip the head off a chicken and start eating the chicken, or pull off a leg off the chicken, eat the chicken, even though it's not a capital crime. God forbid a person should do such a thing. Like the Kesef Mishnah, commentary in the Rambam, writes in the Laws of Kings, in the 9th chapter, in the 11th law, the Im Nimna B'nei Noach Asuli Le'anais Maved Zera. And if we're going to say how that a non-Jew is prohibited to benefit from idolatry, then the fact that you slaughtered this chicken is not putting it into a status that's going to be a benefit to anybody, because it's forbidden because it was offered for idolatry. In Cain, Lotik and close, he didn't do any benefit. You didn't create any new advantage in this chicken that it didn't have before. So therefore, if you didn't do anything to benefit, the Jew who slaughtered it for idolatry outside the Temple Mount didn't do any benefit, because even though he took it out of the category of slaughtered out of a living chicken, but nevertheless it's still prohibited to the non-Jew because it's idolatry, used for idolatry. He hasn't fixed anything. It's still prohibited to the non-Jew. So you could prove from this. You could therefore we could say that it is permissible for the non-Jew to benefit from the idolatry because he could eat this chicken. He could benefit from the offering of idolatry because he could eat this chicken. Therefore, that's why the Jew who did the slaughtering is culpable, because he did something of benefit to that chicken. He brought it not up to the chicken, but he brought the chicken to a new level of possibility. So again, we need to have to look into this more. But so if we look over here, however, it refers us back in the footnote. Footnote 21. It says over here, go back to chapter 9, paragraph 12. So he finishes the chapter over here. We covered this many weeks ago. It sounds like in what he's writing over here that they're permitted in the benefiting, but based on the argument he's making over here. But at the same time, even though the non-Jew is not prohibited in eating the limb of a living animal, a living chick, it's not prohibited. Sorry, let's say it again. Even though he's not a capital crime to eat the limb of a living chicken or bird, nevertheless, it's prohibited. So how does he learn over here that it's permissible to benefit from this chicken? Because we're saying that it's taken out of the category of a limb of a living chicken by the fact that it was slaughtered. It doesn't mean that it's permissible for the non-Jew to use it. It just means that if he does use it, he may be violating the prohibition on benefiting from idolatry, but he's not at least he's not also eating the limb of a living chicken. So this is something that he addresses over here. I refer you back to that class over there where we went into great. I don't have time to recap the whole class. It took us I think actually took us 2 weeks to cover that. But the bottom line over here is, based on how we resolve this issue of whether or not a non-Jew is able to benefit from idolatry, based on that will come the answer, he's saying, to whether or not they could benefit from the condemned city, because it's the same concept of it. You can't benefit from the results of idolatry. Okay, any quick questions directly related to this, because I do need to draw to a close right now. We'll look forward to seeing you later in the week, Wednesday night. Going to be more learning more on prayer. Thursday morning, Amunah, Faith and Action. Thursday night, Gate of Oneness, and then we'll be continuing next Sunday, moving our way through Rabbi Steif. And next week, you can see here already a glimpse ahead. We're going to learn chapter 32, not to set up an altar or some sort of a stone. And the question is whether it's used for idolatry and so on. Okay, we'll look forward to your questions in the email. God bless you all. Thank you for being here. Keep spreading the message of hope.
Thank you.
You all. Thank you.